Welcome to She Been Ready, the podcast. She Been Ready is a conversation, a declaration, and a clarification that Black women have always led. On this podcast, I, Dr. Wendy Williams, educator, psychologist, leader, and auntie, will be joined by Black women who lead and those who have been led well by them. So, you don't have to get ready when you stay ready. And you can trust in the leadership of a Black woman because she been ready. All right, so welcome back to She Been Ready, the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Wendy Williams, and I'm here with a dear, dear, dear friend, Dr. Yuying Tsong. Yuying, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for saying yes to me. Um, this conversation, I'm so excited for us to have. The podcast, She Been Ready, has been focused on Black women's leadership. But what I've been really excited to do this season 2, so we're still new, is to invite other voices from other communities to be in conversation about Black women's leadership, but that it's in conversation with a wider scope and wider community as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been colleagues for a while. We met in the American Psychological Association Division for 35, the Society for the Psychology of Women, and I would say, for me anyway, I feel that you have been in solidarity with me, and I've wanted to be in solidarity with you.
Yes.
And I thought this was a really excellent space to start talking about a conversation around the role of Black and Asian American women's leadership, like particularly in solidarity. And that sits, I think, at the forefront, at least for me, as we've witnessed the racial reckoning in this country and the ways in which Black and African American and Asian descent communities have been pitted against one another, but also fallen victim to white supremacist violence and things of that nature, and how it's gendered as well. So I know that we could go on and on. So we'll have to try to keep our conversation within the time frame for the podcast. But we've talked about some of these things in the past. The first question I ask everybody before we get started into some of the specific topic-based questions is, how did you know that you've been ready? You are a formidable leader. I so respect and appreciate your leadership. I learned so much. I practice my own leadership with some of the lessons that you've taught me just by being. So thank you. And I wonder how you would frame or think about or talk about how you knew that you were ready, how you knew that you were someone who could take up the helm of leadership.
I really I love what I do as a faculty, right? We directly work with students in the classroom, in my research lab, and I'm trained as a therapist, right? So that direct working with folks in my room when I did practice therapy and producing research, right? As a research, as a scholar that addressed mental health disparities. But at the same time, I noticed that whenever I have the opportunity to be in spaces that engage in discussions about changes that are relevant to the entire campus, like when I was on the faculty senate or on university committees, I really find a different energy, and I feel energized in a different way, and I feel challenged in a good way, right? So as I'm having more and more those experiences, I started to think about whether, want to be in those spaces more. As you mentioned, that I've also have a lot of experiences being in different leadership positions in psychology, in American Psychological Association, right? So I think having those experiences, serving the field, serving the profession, but in a systematic, really more thinking about the systematic level, and being able to kind of see the budget side, kind of the business side of things, the system policy side of things, and how that translates to how we can serve and benefit the population. Is really exciting to me. So I started to think about how do I do some of those things that I do at APA on my campus, right? So I can do those things and make some changes to serve the students, serve the faculty. And I think one key thing is I do find myself finding purposes and meanings when I am in those roles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so. I think those are the things that really help me feel like these are the spaces that I should be in, or I want to be in.
Interesting. You know, sometimes people find meaning and leadership within the context of their career, or their work, and sometimes they've known it all their lives. Would you say that for you, it really came within the context of your professional experiences, or do you locate the origins of your leadership narrative of yourself at another point in your life?
That is such a great question. You know, so this is a cultural context. So I grew up in Taiwan,
Mm-hmm.
which is monoracial, multi-ethnic.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a story, so just stay
Yeah,
with
and
me
we're
for a
here
little
for
bit.
the story. You can tell all your stories.
And my parents were those Chinese settlers that arrived to Taiwan at the end of the World War II and the Indochina War.
Okay.
So, you know, ethnically and politically, we were the power majority, even though we're number minority.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of how I grew up, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Seeing myself not as a minority politically and power wise.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my, you know, even though culturally there's a lot of sexism,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know, in my family, I was the first. I was not even the first grandchild, but you know, in my family, for you know different reasons, it was just not. I just did not feel like that in my
Mm-hmm.
family and my extended family, including my grandparents.
Mm.
So I was, you know, in kindergarten, I was like the MC at graduation. I was like, I think I keep going back to be the MC. You know, when I was in grade school, I was class president, like K to 12, like different things. So I've always feel like very comfortable in those
Okay.
positions. And I also, you know, not that I'm expected, I don't feel
Mm-hmm.
forced, but
Okay.
I do feel very natural in those positions.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so you know, so I do feel comfortable, but is I think it's interesting thinking about that in the US context, right? Because you know, as I reflect more about kind of my experiences growing up and you know really looking at Asian American mental health, I think culturally having that experiences growing up,
Mm-hmm.
all the leaders, right, share my similar ethnicity,
Ah.
right? Speak in the same accent,
Mm-hmm.
people who look like me. So so I think that's a very different imprint
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
Asians who grew up, folks with Asian descent grew up in the diaspora,
Ah.
right? Having to manage racism very earlier on. I did not have to manage that. I mean, yes, I
Mm-hmm.
managed that globally, but I did not
Yeah.
have to manage that interpersonally until I come to the US for graduate school, right? Still a young adult, but
Interesting.
still graduate school.
Yeah, but your formative years, your
That's
entire
right.
development,
That's
you
right.
were in the you were in the group with political power, and so
That's
you did
right.
not feel without voice.
That's right. That's right. So when I
Mm.
encounter racism, overt or covert,
Mm-hmm.
in the US, um, you know, I still have internalized global racism, right?
Sure,
Global, you know,
sure.
internalized oppression for other identity. But I think my reaction is very to racism that I experience is very
Mm.
rebellious, is more like you're wrong,
Yeah.
right?
So
Versus
you
like,
don't say like, oh, okay, here this is again. You're like, they're wrong.
that's right. I'm
You don't
like
internalize it in the same way,
interpersonally, right?
interpersonally.
Yes. And I you know I internalize some of it, but I think it is different, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I do contribute that feeling that I can do this,
Mm-hmm.
um I think to a certain part too, growing up just seeing leaders who look like me
Yeah.
quite a bit. Yeah.
Hearing you reminds me of some friends and colleagues that I have and know
Mm-hmm.
who came up throughout the African diaspora. So I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
particularly of Haitian immigrants, and
Mm-hmm.
for whom the leadership, for whom Haiti won independence. They paid
Mm-hmm.
the price handedly in other ways, economically and politically, but in terms of the internalized notion of self and strength and perspective and capability, I've yet to meet a
Mm-hmm.
Haitian descendant who believes in their inferiority.
Mm-hmm.
And they just don't, they're like, yeah, okay, no. And so that's kind of what I'm picking up from you. And I think that that's such a powerful
Yes.
piece, because we then realize that we craft and hone that what your language around the imprint, we do that very early.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so it matters, that background, and it matters the messages that a
That's
person
right.
is getting.
That's right.
Interesting.
And I do feel hopeful, I think, for folks who are right, who are in the diaspora, right? Like in
Mm-hmm.
the US and in other
Mm-hmm.
countries, that
Mm-hmm.
because when I also think about, because culturally there's very much embedded patriarchy and sexism
Mm-hmm.
in Taiwan, right? In Asia. Even though there's a lot of matriarchy in my family, I do think about
Mm-hmm.
my family, for whatever reason, was able to insulate me when I was very young. So
Okay.
again, kind of imprinting that, there's no innate sex
Mm-hmm.
differences in terms of your ability, your
Mm-hmm.
excellence, and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
that also has helped a lot, I think, as I kind of
Mm-hmm.
navigate the cultural sexism
Okay.
outside of my family.
Okay.
So I often wonder how, this is off topic, but I often do wonder, as I have 2 kids in the
Mm-hmm.
US, how do I raise them
Mm-hmm.
so that they're aware of the racism structurally, interpersonally, right, and
Mm-hmm.
systematically, but also that core, uh, how can we
Mm-hmm.
kind of instill that core so they don't
Mm-hmm.
internalize the racism, right?
Well, one, I want to say, and this is what I've told so many of the guests, this is a Black woman's podcast. There is nothing that's off topic, because we speak circularly and it's all welcome. But the other thing that I will share is that that during this season, actually season 2, we do have a conversation around motherhood as leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And what I hear you saying is something really critical and important around how mothers. My colleague that I interviewed is a Black woman, so she's talking about it from the perspective of Black motherhood, but really thinking about from the position of non-dominance in this U.S. culture, what
Mm-hmm.
raising children means for them to cultivate an understanding of their context, but not be
Mm-hmm.
ruled or shaped by them in such a way that they act against their own self-interest.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
right.
That's right.
And so that
Absolutely.
that is a tension in this country when you are of the non-dominant group, when you're not white, when you're not male, when
That's
you're
right.
not heteronormative. There are all
That's
these
right.
ways in which, yeah, folks have to sort of be on the lookout for transgressing and continuing to be authentically themselves in
That's
leadership.
right. That's right. And it is not colorblind, right?
Oh
Because
God,
the
no.
key is not
Like,
to pretend that it's this thing.
like,
It's so important to be aware and recognize, right, all
which
of those
glasses do you
things.
wear that you don't see color? I mean, I'm always
Exactly.
just perplexed by this mess.
That's right.
But yeah,
So
yeah.
recognize those, and with a goal that knowing that it's not okay, but not
Mhm.
internalize that inferiority, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
How do you see it with a critical consciousness?
That's right. That's right.
That's
That's
right.
exactly
And I
right.
feel like
Yes.
perhaps that's what we're saying about parenting
Mhm.
these
Mhm.
children for the world that will see them and see them how it wants to
Mhm.
see them and not how they see themselves, maybe all
That's
that.
right.
How do
That's
you
right.
help them to cultivate a critical consciousness as
That's
they're
right. That's right.
growing?
That's right. I we are working on a critical consciousness parenting manuscript.
Oh,
Hopefully it will come out at some point.
oh gosh. Well,
Yeah.
I definitely want to see that.
Yeah.
Um, yes, I'm not going to ask you about when and where right now, because I know that's probably not appropriate, but probably by the time that this is published,
Yeah.
that will be published too, or be
Yes.
on the way.
Yes.
So as a woman and a leader of Asian descent, what has it taken for you to be ready to lead? You've talked about it a little bit already, so I don't want to make you feel like you need to repeat anything that you've said, but I'll ask the question and you just let me know if there's anything more that you need to add. What
Mhm.
is your sense of the connections and the distinctions between what is needed and required to support Asian women's leadership and other groups of diverse folks who are not seen as the natural leaders in any particular situation or setting?
Mhm. Mhm. This is a really interesting question. So I've been thinking about this quite a bit, actually,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
in the context. So, the last couple of years, I've been doing more work on critical consciousness,
mm-hmm,
kind of
mm-hmm,
how to apply that framework to our
mm-hmm,
teaching, to our pedagogy, to
mm-hmm,
our clinical work, right?
mm-hmm,
But also, kind of really thinking about decolonization, right, as part of it. And so in that process, I really kind of reflect a lot about, I swear I'm going to get to the point at some
No, please don't. Please go
so
as you are,
yes.
as you are.
In that process of
Mm-hmm.
writing and learning, I really think a lot more. I really have thinking and reflecting a lot more about my experiences growing up, right? Because I see the privileges that, and also I see the benefits that I have gained, right? Like that core imprint, really like just knowing, just feeling that I can do things. Like there are difficulties, not that I know how to do things, but I had that kind of imprint. But I also, so I see the benefits, I appreciate the benefits, but I'm also kind of come to terms or working on come to terms and recognizing that our families are the settlers, right? Our families are the colonizers. That we're not the first wave of colonizer of Taiwan, the island, right?
Yeah,
But we're
yeah,
certainly one of the waves. So I
yeah.
see a lot of parallels, kind of that, and kind of as we talk about decolonization in the US context,
Yes.
right? So I think in that I'm really kind of reflecting and learning and recognizing kind of my role in that as a child, as someone who benefits from being the settler, being the political power, um, and to my achievement or whatever that I have accomplished, and thinking about that in the context of being in the US, right? And I think so, in terms of what just, I mean, I think there are so many similar, being the racial minority, we all have to respond and manage and combat white supremacy,
Sure.
right? And the whiteness, as we're not being seen as leaders naturally, or we're not being seen as the first choice, all of that. But I think one distinction for folks of Asian descent is that really need to be intentional and think about is the role of model minority myth, right? So model minority myth, really briefly, is this idea or belief that Asians are the good minority, right? Because supposedly that we can pull ourselves by our bootstrap,
Bootstraps.
we have better educational accomplishment and financial accomplishment, even though in reality that's not the case, right?
That's right.
There are quite a few Asian ethnic groups that are in poverty, really struggle with access to education, healthcare, all of that. So that's hence it's a myth. But what it does, I think, to folks of Asian descent is the sense that there's a proximity to whiteness and to privileges, right? So some argue that it's a good thing because you feel like you're supposed to accomplish. But I will really, really want folks who want to be leader to critically think about that, because it is a tool, it is a manipulation, right? That by saying that Asian are the good minority, it is saying that other folks
Are
are
not.
right, are not.
Yeah.
Right? It
Yeah.
is really further the anti-blackness, right? So we're the Asians and the model minority idea are really being used as pawns,
That's
right?
right.
To further push the other folks down. So I think for folks of Asian descent, uh, it, it really is to think about the role of how much and how we have internalized the model minority myth in the sense of white supremacy, because model minority myth is whiteness, is white supremacy, right? So how much we have internalized that knowingly, unknowingly, and how are we perpetrating that knowingly and unknowingly? I think that's one big distinction, the work Asian folks have to do, that's different from the other folks.
I think it's interesting because I also hear in what you're sharing too, the need to also maintain solidarity across the diversity of
right.
Asian groups.
That's right.
If you
That's
come
right.
in as a colonizer of an Asian, country, Taiwan,
That's right.
then there's also something to be said for what does that reparative work look like, and what does that
That's right.
decolonizing work look like in that space.
That's right.
And I really appreciate your sort of ability to sit inside the multiplicities of, the calculus around a privilege and oppression, it depends on what day, where you are, and what's
Mhm.
happening. And
That's right. That's right.
it's
That's
never
right.
like it's just finite.
That's right. That's right.
And so I guess I want to acknowledge that as well, too, because I also hear that in acknowledging and naming these truths, that there's an opportunity, a doorway opening for coalition building, for
Yes.
co-conspiratorship or allyship, as folks like to talk about it. Can you
That's
tell
right.
me or share with us a bit